You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and introduce today's guest.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm excited to introduce you to Christopher or Woody Mawhinney. We're going to talk about pet insurance today, but not just about pet insurance, but how to choose the pet insurance. And Woody has the whole startup around that. He's the co-founder and CEO of Pawlicy, as a P-A-W, Advisor. So Pawlicy Advisor is like Priceline for pet insurance, helping pet owners find the right insurance coverage and best deals. They aren't an insurer themselves. They help veterinarians around the country streamline the insurance conversation by educating pet owners on their options, which is fantastic because I know from insurance companies that's the hardest part is actually to talk to the owners. He holds an MBA degree from Columbia Business School at Columbia University and BA in Environmental Studies and Government and Legal Studies from, I'm not going to pronounce that. Can you say that?
Bowden College. That's okay. It was years ago.
But I guess the first or the story job comes from previous position, had him stationed at the Department of Homeland Security. He's an avid seeker, has two dogs, Wrigley, a 5-year-old Sharpei, and Wilma, a 2-year-old Great Dane. Welcome to the show, Woody. We are happy to have you, and I love companies that start with something that sounds good. That's why Shawn named his company Talkatoo, so he can say at the end, "Talkatoo you later."
Boom.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us about Pawlicy. As I mentioned, I know that it's really hard to sell insurance. It's a great idea. Every veterinarian wants to have insurance. Of course, everybody insured in their clinic, but we know that in North America, there's about 2% of insured pets. And I think in the UK, there's up to 20. So what's going on? Why it's so different? And how are you helping pet owners to choose insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for the question. So, we often hear a lot from pet owners that if they have insurance, they don't know whether they got a good deal, or if they don't have insurance, they don't really know whether it's worth the money. And so I think part of the problem in the US is that it's half, awareness, half education. And there are more and more pet insurance options popping up in the US today. As I'm sure people have read in the news, you have companies like Lemonade joining the fray. You have Zoetis launching pumpkin pet insurance here in New York City. And with those new options, I think the awareness part of the problem is readily being solved. Pet insurance has only been around since the 1980s in the US. It's been around a little bit longer in the UK. And the first products that were developed in the UK were really centered on providing a great experience for veterinary staff. So today, if you actually go to a veterinary clinic in the UK, chances are they're going to ask you whether you have pet insurance and what brand you have. And there are over 85 different options in the UK. In the US, it's many fewer options. We're talking around 15 or so carriers so far, although that's growing, just about every month. And if you walk into a clinic, chances are, they won't really talk about it unless you bring it up. Or if you have a puppy or kitten, maybe that's the time that they bring it up. So I think there are some behavioral changes that need to take place and that are taking place. But it's been, rapidly evolving space over the past few years.
I still want to drill down on that. My impression that, I'm a newcomer. Is it still a newcomer after 18 years to Canada?
Maybe slow, but not a newcomer.
Well, I don't. You know what? I don't say a boot like Shawn does, so I'm not a Canadian yet. So I found, the medicine, the human medicine, is socialized in Canada, and it's paid out of our taxes. And you go and and you're sort of insured, right? And then in the US, it's a common thing that you have to pay for your insurance. Everybody knows you don't get insurance, you die in the United States. So, or that's what we hear. And in the UK, what's interesting, they have the same medical system as we do. So NHS is publicly and paid out of taxes, and they have that. But the insurance worked really well in the UK, even though they don't have that perception. And in the States, it's not adopted. So I'm just conflicted. How does that work, and why? I know that the pitch changed, but how did they get there so fast in the UK Because it would be wonderful. And what you do is wonderful because that brings it forward. But why didn't happen if in the US they already paying for their insurance?
Yeah, so in the US, the first products that were developed, to be honest, had many exclusions, for hereditary congenital conditions. They had limits per condition. And now the product has really evolved with greater competition. Obviously, insurance companies have to innovate and develop really great consumer experiences. And so that involves, having more or less umbrella coverage for anything a pet could encounter, whether it be an accident or illness, disease, cuts, broken bones, those sorts of things. But, for the first decade or so of the product being introduced in the US, the product hadn't evolved. And so, a lot of pet owners grew frustrated with the experience, just as vets grew frustrated that people were coming into their clinic expecting to have a treatment covered, and lo and behold, something was excluded. And so it was a bad experience all the way around. In the UK, they seemed to get it right off the bat. They covered those conditions more broadly speaking, and they had more companies enter the space more rapidly. So the growth rate was about, I think it was something like 1% a year.
Oh, wow.
So over time, it's really grown quickly. In the US, I think we're at an inflection point. I think the products are evolving really quickly, and a lot of larger companies are getting involved. And so now, this is a mission of Pawlicy Advisors, really help evolve the pet insurance space to meet veterinarians' needs as well as pet owners' needs.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the obvious question that I have, but it's going to be a 6-part question, Woody, so I apologize in advance, is how do you make money? So that's interesting. But then the other thing that I can't help but think is like this would be in a perfect affiliate marketing business where you make friends with all the pet insurance, whoever pays you the most money gets the most referrals and recommendations. But then I would think that you wouldn't have 5-star reviews. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about how you make money and how you help your clients. And I guess your clients are both pet owners and insurers.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great question, and one I love to answer because we've developed a new model. So historically, pet insurance marketplaces over the past decade or so have been more or less blogs. They'll show, out of a 5-star rating, what insurance could be a good fit for animals. And they may take a one-time affiliate fee, maybe bonus incentives. They may advertise some plans at the top of the page because they're being paid more. Pawlicy Advisor is a licensed insurance agency nationally. And so what that allows us to do is negotiate and solicit insurance and share in the commissions. So it allows us to be free for pet owners and vets because we take part of the insurance carrier's cut. And what that does is it means that we don't make money if someone has a bad experience with their insurance policy, because if they, basically cancel their policy, then we don't receive a recurring revenue stream from that policy sale. So it incentivizes us to do a really good match. And what we've tried to do is, essentially negotiate consistent rates across the board. So we're not motivated to push something to the top of the page, and it allows us to talk openly with pet owners and vets about our value proposition as an objective marketplace and advocate for a pet's health.
That's awesome. So just want to make a little note that before Shawn said, or asked the question to you, he apologized first. So that's very Canadian, as well as he said 6 questions and asked you 2. So also very Canadian. So another topic, a little shift, wellness plans versus insurance. What pet owners really need. Mars came up with their wellness plan. They were sort of, pioneers in this. And now everybody does pet plans. There's commercial products. They take a cut. There's plans that are incorporated, wellness plans that are incorporated into practice management systems. And then there's still this sort of gray area. Mars clients or Banfield clients were quite disappointed as I was talking to the clinicians in there. Like, they sign up for something, they have so many times they repeat this wellness plan. People still come back in the hospital and say, yeah, I have insurance. Well, you don't. And then, so are there plans right now that are thinking in that combination? Because it really needs to be a one thing, and there's some sort of policy or regulation that doesn't allow to have that. But this is really what the pet owners look for. If I was the pet owner, and I'm not, which everybody's surprised, that's how you're not a pet owner, you're a veterinarian. 2 kids is enough. But if I wanted everything covered, like my car, the chips in one windshield, like, everything. My wife lost the keys. I want everything covered. I don't want to think about it. So are there plans? Is the industry going towards that, or why there's not? And what is the sort of legal? I think there's something behind it that could not combine the two.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So the industry as a whole is moving towards a plan that will cover both wellness and accident and illness. Today, typically, the accident illness policy is sold, and then wellness can be purchased as an add-on. But it's a different type of product. With wellness, when you buy it, the coverage applies the next day, and you'll be covered for your wellness exam, vaccines, maybe a spay neuter procedure, some of those other sort of common things that you could encounter as a pet owner. And what this really touches on is an interesting phenomenon that's, I think, unique to pet insurance, because usually pet care products are very consumer friendly products. And people think of pet insurance as something that they should use on at least a monthly basis. Whereas if you have an auto insurance policy or a homeowner's policy, if you were to use that policy, it would mean that something awful happened, right? Maybe your home was flooded or you got into an accident. People who have pet insurance expect to get value out of it. And so that's why the wellness insurance product has really grown quickly. A lot of pet owners are looking to get those common things covered. The problem is that insurance as a product is really there to mitigate risk. And that's where, a lot of pet owners, today especially, are thinking, down the line, what sort of emergencies or, more expensive procedures like an MRI, could need to occur, and they need to, basically reduce their financial exposure for those products. But as a whole, I think insurance companies are looking towards, embracing those consumer preferences and trying to create wellness programs that do offer a more significant tie-in to the accident illness product. And you see that in the form of, Nationwide recently launched sort of a holistic pet plan that, covers, up to 90% of wellness procedures, as opposed to an itemized, per condition sort of limit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The question that I have is, it sounds like your business is like an insurance brokerage. It sounds like very typical insurance brokerage model. But how have you leveraged technology to be a little bit more innovative, and what's behind the curtain?
Yeah, absolutely. So analyzing insurance is a complex game. And what we've done is we've integrated directly with insurance carriers to essentially get real-time pricing. But then on the education side, there's a lot we can do to improve the user experience and to help pet owners find savings as well as the right coverage. Each pet breed is unique. They come down with very unique conditions. I've got a Shar-Pei. He came down with a breed-specific disease, and it costs $250 a month for his medication. And a lot of pet owners, when they adopt or buy a pet, they don't realize, or they don't think about those common conditions that their pet can encounter. And so what we try to do is point people to a product that's going to cover the things that they would expect to be covered. And so if you've got a dog who's susceptible to maybe a knee injury, you wouldn't want a plan that wouldn't cover knee injuries for the first year a policy is enforced. You'd want, a policy that will coverage those sorts of things right off the bat. On top of that, when it comes to pricing, there's a lot of variability in the market. And a lot of pet owners aren't aware that as your pet ages, the cost of pet insurance also increases, and it can increase anywhere from 5% to 35% year over year. And this is something that I encountered personally with my own dog, and it was one of the motivations for starting Pawlicy Advisor. Is a lot of pet owners need to be thinking about price in terms of what they're going to be spending over their pet's lifespan. You don't want to choose a policy that looks cheap today, but then lo and behold, 3 or 4 years down the line, you could be priced out and have to cancel your policy. So one of the things that we focus on is trying to provide the right coverage, but also the right price that is going to work for you, not just in the near term, but over the long term.
So how does your model work? So you obviously have demand and supply. So you have the pet owners, and then you have the insurance companies. When you came up with the idea, do you go to insurance companies first and you negotiate with them? Do you find the customers? Like, how does that whole model work, and how do you go to market? Like, where do you find your customers? Do you partner up with clinics? Do you have your own pool and you just, digital advertising, and you find the customers that are looking for insurance? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a licensed insurance agent in every state. And, what that essentially gave me was a foot in the door to have conversations with the executives of these pet insurance companies. As I mentioned before, we've essentially invented a new model for pet insurance, which is aligning our motivations with the pet owner. And so we're not receiving those sort of one-time bonus incentives or affiliate fees. And so we had to get insurance companies on board, and that took a lot of convincing, a lot of calls with executives to get to know them on a personal level and to sell them on the vision that, we'd be creating something that pet owners would find valuable, and it would lower the customer acquisition costs of the insurer over time. And what has been exciting to me is that what started out as just sort of an experiment, which was going to a veterinary conference just to see what the most important stakeholder in pet health had to say about what we were building, turned into the primary focus of the business, which is looping vets into everything we do as a business to develop a compelling product to simplify their conversation and streamline the experience for their clients. And what we found is that, vets value pet insurance, and the AVMA has studied this, and they've recently updated their guidance on pet insurance to say that they actively endorse the concept of pet health insurance. But the problem is that, veterinarians only have, 10, 15 minutes with a client, and taking 5 minutes to 10 minutes talking about pet insurance eats into that time. And they find the product confusing. They have salespeople visiting their offices nonstop. And what we do for vets is we can say, look, we've got these insurance carriers on our platform. The insurance conversation doesn't need to be complicated. You should be able to realize the upside of insurance, which in the form of increased treatment acceptance and hopefully an easier conversation your staff has with the pet owner, and do it in a way that saves pet owners money at the end of the day.
That's really cool. You always hear the entrepreneurial vets that start the clinic or start the network. I'm talking to my colleagues, and as a part of their plan is to have, almost all of them, to have certain percentage of clients insured, because obviously that will create, the less friction on, getting into the door and stuff like that. But none of them have the strategy to get there. And I think you're doing that and helping them out. And that sort of was the thought. The second thought was interesting is that, doing this podcast, it's so fascinating how people are looking at small opportunities within, our industry we're exposed, and finding out those inefficiencies in different parts of the process. And you kind of tapped into that and you said, yeah, they do have, we do. I think it's like the statistics is like 17 minutes a year we have to talk to the client, and there's so much stuff you need to sell to them. God forbid saying sell, because we're not selling to it, but provide to them, but they can't pay for it. So insurance seems to be most important, and a lot of companies struggle with that. So do you get the customers then straight from the vet clinics? That's how you engage with them? So your sort of relationship with a vet, and then they give your card, or like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So, the experience vets have had with insurance to date is they have, maybe 10 different insurance brochures, or they choose a handful that resonate with them the most. And, they'll say, I don't know what's best for you, but here are some options. And that's really as far as a vet can go when it comes to insurance, because it's so highly regulated. So there is a liability concern that vets have in recommending insurance. And what we allow them to do is completely outsource the conversation if they want. We encourage them to at least have a conversation about the value of thinking ahead to budgetary concerns when it comes to their pet's health. But when it comes to insurance, they have an advocate standing by their side that they can refer clients to, because they know it's free and you don't have to pay to ask us a question about insurance or to investigate your options. That's really what we're there for.
Woody, one question that I just can't help but ask: how do you go from working for the Department of Homeland Security to being a tech entrepreneur?
It's a natural path, man. What are you talking about?
Right. From analyzing the risk of chemical facilities with high risk chemicals to pet insurance. So when I was working at Homeland Security, I got my first dog, and it's the Shar-Pei I was referencing earlier in the podcast. And within 3 months, he came down with something called Shar-Pei fever. And so I was told by my vet that basically to keep him alive, I would need to pay out of pocket $250 a month for essentially a human anti-inflammatory medication. That got me thinking long and hard about insurance. And when I looked into the product, I found it entirely confusing. And I carried that problem with me to business school years later. And with the help of some great advisors and professors, I realized, it was worth talking with the pet owner community in New York about. And so I surveyed hundreds of pet owners in the New York area, and everybody had the same problem when it came to insurance. They really didn't know which was best or why, and they found it to be, a product that wasn't really transparent. And at that time, I met my co-founder, Travis, and he had gone through the same experience with his cat. So he's the cat side of the business, I'm the dog side of the business. And we teamed up to create a solution that would help pet owners navigate the space, because we feel like there is a solution or a product out there for everyone, but there's no one size fits all policy. And if you navigate the space correctly, you have the chance to save money and have a great experience.
That's awesome, Woody. Well, a super fascinating story, the dog that changed your life. I love it. So we are out of time. So we got a couple questions, and then I guess we'll wrap up. So first question is a TED Talk, a YouTube video, something that's inspired you, a book that you think you'd like to share, or that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, a TEDx talk actually was incredibly impactful in my life, and we now have it as part of the onboarding experience for any new employees of Pawlicy Advisor, and it's titled "What Being a Veterinarian Really Takes," and it's by Dr. Melanie Bowden. It came out in March of this year, and something she said in that talk that I still carry with me today is that nothing is more soul crushing in life than having the skills and ability to help something helpless, but you can't do it. And, we think about this all the time with our work with veterinarians. We want to make sure that pet owners can find a solution, and maybe it's insurance, maybe it's something else, but we can help them find it. And ultimately, that's the most important thing to us, is doing right by the pet owner and helping vets guide clients to solutions that ultimately help them accept treatment and make the right decision for their pets.
That's really cool. Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet. I need to. Yeah, that's really cool.
We added it to our onboarding, Ivan. So everybody that starts to talking to has to watch that video. It's pretty great.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's awesome. Check it out, man.
But you're not hiring. How do you...
We just hired like 3 people this week. Anyways, ask the next question. Get back to the podcast.
So what do you, so you obviously talk to a lot of people in the industry, and do you know someone that would be an awesome guest to invite?
Absolutely. I think John Keatley, who's the co-founder and CEO of ScratchPay, would be a phenomenal guest. They've seen a tremendous boost in vets who have been working with them, as well as pet owners who have been seeking their product. And ultimately, it's another company that's helping pet owners afford the cost of veterinary care. And they seem to be doing a great job. So I think he'd be a great guest.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryiinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.